is we fail more often than we succeed, and it's our motivation and drive to continue to succeed and carry on and keep trying.
Thoughts and opinions by JobTlks podcast members and guests are not representative of any department, organization, or city. Hey guys, I know you want to get into the episode, but give me 1 second of your time real quick. Pretty excited to announce that myself and a couple of my buddies are putting on the first, hopefully annual, Metro Boston Fire School right here in Massachusetts, May 17th and 18th. Really excited about it. If you want to register for it, check out the link in the description. Also, check out this awesome swag that our buddies over at Smoke Show and Apparel and Black Swine Graphics put together for us. Could not have asked for a better design. These guys knocked it out of the park. If you want to order some swag, you can also find it at the link in the description, or you can hit up our Instagram or Facebook pages. We'll have the link there as well. We hope to see you at the conference. If you can't make it to the conference, help support us. Get one of these awesome shirts. Thanks. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JobTlks podcast. I'm here today with Lieutenant Jon Talin from Hyannis Fire. If you guys have been watching the show, you'll see about 2.5 years ago, we had John on talking about addiction and recovery. Great episode. I'm going to link it. So yeah, when you're done with this one, if you want to check that one out, if you haven't, feel free to do so. We're doing this episode today because John reached out to me a few months ago and recommended a book to me. Recommended The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh. Said it was a good book on leadership, which I agree after reading it, that was kind of applicable to the firehouse. And thought it'd make a good episode to come and talk about, do a book review, number one, which we'd kind of done a little bit in the past, and then talk about how leadership affects the fire service and how the lessons in the book apply to the firehouse. Sound about right, John?
It does. Very true.
Good. So I'm going to let John kind of take the lead on the conversation because he's passionate about the book. And so, yeah, John, why this book, I guess, to start?
Well, the Bill Walsh book, it came to me, I think I heard it through a podcast. I can't remember which podcast it was. They mentioned The Score of the Game, The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh, which was intriguing to me. So I picked it up, I read it, and made a bunch of markings in it.
Love that.
Along with a lot of notes and other stuff. And it's certainly applicable to the fire service, to leadership on and off of the fire ground in preparation for any sort of incident that we come to.
Yeah, so you're a pretty avid reader in general. I know.
Yes.
I follow you on Instagram. You're kind of a Jocko-ish subscriber, right? So I always see up 4:30 in the morning, cup of coffee, book in your hand, kind of doing your thing, which is one I think is awesome. You want to talk about who Bill Walsh is? I think if you're an avid football fan, you probably are aware, but if you're not, you might not know who he is.
I'm sure. And so Bill Walsh was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers from 1979 to 1988. He was born in California in 11/30/31. Unfortunately passed away in July 30th of 2007 at the age of 75 from cancer. He's also the head coach of Stanford University from 77 to 78. And then again, after he retired from the 49ers, 92 to 94. And he led the 49ers to 3 Super Bowl wins. I'm not much of a sports enthusiast, but there's a lot of great information out there. So pardon me if I don't have the full story on Bill Walsh and his success. It sounds like it was quite amazing because he turned the 49ers around and brought them into a dynasty back then.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the big parts of the story is that the 49ers had a really, really terrible record, and he went from like a 2-win season to winning the Super Bowl in was it 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Wasn't and the whole point of it is that it wasn't, obviously it was performance on the football field and like how they played the game, but it was really a lot of the leadership and how he approached turning the team around that made the big difference. It wasn't, throwing the ball better. I mean, it was, but it was like, how do we motivate people? How are we effective leaders to make them do their job better?
Yes.
Versus like the play-by-play on the football field. So yeah, I thought it was a good book too. And I think there were definitely a lot of lessons in the book that are very applicable probably for anywhere that you're in a leadership role, but definitely within the firehouse. So,
yes.
Getting into it, what's the first part of the book that stood out to you that you thought, oh yeah, this is applicable to me as a lieutenant of the fire service?
Certainly one of the first things that came to mind after reading through the beginning of it was failure is part of success, an integral part. And that's
Love that.
certainly true. Yeah, it's certainly true is we fail more often than we succeed. And it's our motivation and drive to continue to succeed and carry on and keep trying. Because I've certainly made tons of mistakes on and off the fire ground, at work and off duty. And I've certainly learned from all of them and trying not to recreate those failures again and just learning from what we do. And in the fire service, as an officer, supervisor, leader, you take the hit for when there is failure. When your crew succeeds, the crew gets the compliment. They get the credit, and you just basically, as the officer, stay in the background and know that they did the great job.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a really common saying, obviously, that we learn more from our failures than we do our successes. I think they tend to, if you care about what you do, again, in any line of work, but in the fire service, if you care about what you do, when you have that point of failure, you really analyze it and try to take home a lesson like, okay, why did this happen and how can I prevent it
Right.
again? And I think it's a good mentality to have. How do you think as an officer in the fire service that you implement a culture where you let people know that it's okay to and even good to fail sometimes.
As soon as you fail, you have to admit it. You have to take ownership, what you did wrong and how it went, and also what you can do to improve yourself. Defeat is always going to be part of the game, regardless of which profession you're in. He, it was also written in his book, My Five Dues for Getting Back into the Game, which is quite interesting because, when you get defeated, sometimes it hurts and, wipes out your motivation. But, a good leader will just get back up and dust it off and get right back in the game. And number one is do expect defeat. Number two would be do force yourself to stop looking backward and dwelling on the professional train wreck you have just been in, which is quite to the point. Number three would be to allow yourself appropriate recovery, grieving, and time. That's important to self-reflection and analyzing what went wrong and
Yeah.
being able to put steps forward to take care of that. And number four, do tell yourself, I am going to stand and fight again, with the knowledge that often when things are at their worst, you're closer than you can imagine to success. Which is, there's just repeating it, just keep going, keep trying.
Yeah.
And then number five, the last one, do begin planning for your next session encounter.
Yeah, I think that's huge. So once you've admitted there's been a mistake and you kind of analyze it and you reflect on it, and then it's time to get back in the game. And I think what you said initially, the first part of that is just admitting that a mistake was made. And I think we all hope that when we make the mistakes that they're going to be in training, right? So that we can learn from them and not have that happen on the fire ground.
Yeah.
But the fact is that it does to everyone. It happens on the fire ground too. And it's a dynamic environment. And I think being able to admit like, hey, maybe I didn't do this the best possible way, or maybe I did something that affected the outcome a little bit differently is important. I think checking the ego a little bit, is always hard. It's always hard.
It is hard. It is very hard.
We're an A-type personality profession.
Yes.
And so, people don't always want to admit when they're wrong because they don't want the blow to the ego. And I think that's where good leadership is important, because you need to create an environment where when somebody says, hey, I messed up, it's like, okay, this is a learning lesson, not I'm berating you for messing up kind of thing. Hey, this is a learning lesson.
Certainly, and you can do it as a teaching moment. When you make a mistake, and also when somebody else makes a mistake, you can do coaching.
Yeah.
On the mistake itself. One thing that just came to mind about it is I've certainly made tons of mistakes, and just ownership one that I'll go through quickly. We had so on my department, the captain is in the car and the officers are on the tower and the engine. and the firefighters make up the rest of the assignment that's going. So we respond to a building fire with the car, 2 engines, a tower, and an ambulance when we were fully staffed. And there was one fire that the captain was out and I was in the car, and it was a 3-story apartment building with a fire in the bathroom. I've lost count to how many fires I've been to with ceiling fans because that was the cause of this one.
Yep.
And long story short, I didn't wear my gear during it while I was in command of the fire. And we did an after actions critique on it, or analyst. And senior firefighter, I could see him pretty antsy in the corner. And so I just came out with it. The first thing I said was, the biggest mistake I made was not putting on my gear. And after that, I could see his demeanor just settle down. Kind of predicted what he was going to say. I think I was accurate by the way his body language was after it.
Yeah.
And, ever since then, I've always made it a point to, one of the first things to do is put on the gear and then do what you need to do.
Yeah. I think that's huge because I think, again, as the person in that leadership position, if you can come out and be like, hey, I did something wrong,
right?
And now I know, and I won't do it again. And, if I, in that scenario, if I harp on you for putting your gear on, and then I don't do it, that's not the right look for me. That doesn't
Right.
make you feel confident. That's like a do as you're told or do as I say, not as I do type thing. So,
Right.
So I think being able to to own it as the leader makes the environment just that much better for the people underneath that can then, okay, well, I maybe could have done this better and I maybe could have done this better. And I think part of it is that not all mistakes are they're not going to lose the building. They're not going to prevent you from making the rescue. They're not going to whatever. It's just a lot of times it's like, what could I have done better? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
Okay, this went okay, but if I analyze it, was there a spot in here somewhere that I could have improved on? So, mistake isn't always like a big mistake. It's just, sometimes it's just, okay, I could have done this a little bit better and maybe I would have been more efficient or maybe something else might have happened or whatever the case is.
Right. In 2 points, mistakes, unfortunately, they, as we've seen in line DES, have added up.
Yeah.
It's a series of events. It's not just one event. So being able to pick out the mistakes you made or the 1 or 2 that you made on the fire ground and be able to correct yourself for the next fire that you go to will certainly help. And you mentioned leading by example. I have a friend, Mike Bates, he was on Providence Fire, retired as the operations chief. And he told me not everybody leads by example in a good way. So you have to pick
that's true.
Who you observe by leading by example and make sure that you're doing everything right to lead by the correct example. And I found that quite interesting because throughout my career here in Hyannis, I've noticed great officers and I've noticed not so great officers. And, you kind of take it through observation, osmosis to form yourself into what the good officers portrayed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how often do you hear or think like, oh, I don't know exactly how I want to be, but I know I don't want to be like that.
Certainly.
I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I know that I don't want to do those things. I think that we can have mentors that are people we look up to and kind of more unofficial mentors are people that we look at and say, okay, I don't like the way they do X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to take from that, when I'm in this position, I'm going to try not to do that. And I think it'll make, me and my crew more effective or whatever. And,
right.
I think it needs to be said too, like, that doesn't mean that they're bad people or even that they're like whatever. It's just sometimes, personality traits matter. Some people are very opinionated on certain things.
Yes.
Especially, I mean, what do they say? Nothing divides firemen like talking tactics or politics, right?
Yeah, sure.
Everybody's got their opinion on stuff, and I think having the ability to talk about that, especially if it's different, and then see, like you said, like, I don't really like the way that they do these certain things. I'm going to try to do things differently and see if that works for me. And maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. I think that's another part of the leadership game is that it's kind of trial and error for probably your whole career. It's a little bit of trial and error, but like you eventually kind of get into a role, but initially for sure it's definitely some trial and error to figure out like what works for you, what works for the people that are underneath you, what works for your administration, like, and trying to balance all those little things.
Yes. Honest self-reflection helps a lot.
Yeah.
Just so he mentions the do's, my five do's, and then my five don'ts. He also mentions don't ask why me. Number one, don't expect sympathy. Don't bellyache. Don't keep accepting condolences. And number five, the last one, don't blame others. So there you go, owning your mistake.
That's it. Yep. Owning it.
And I feel that those five don'ts, if you do those five don'ts, it's almost like a victim mentality.
Yeah.
Like how Bruce Lee would say, I'm not in the room with them, they're in the room with me.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, can you read them one more time? Sorry. I had a thought and it just left.
Yeah. Don't ask why me. Don't expect sympathy. Don't bellyache. Don't keep accepting condolences. Don't blame others.
Yeah. So don't ask why me. Like, I think there's not a lot of room in the fire service for self-pity in those scenarios, right? Because you have to learn from them. So
Right.
so if you're self-pitying and you're not instead trying to focus on like, how can I learn from this, then you're not improving. So yeah, so if you're why me, if you're dwelling on it, if you're liking everybody to give you sympathy and tell you it's okay, well, then the next time you might do the same thing because you never learned a lesson. And at the end of the day, the outcome is for the people that we serve, right? So
yes,
if we don't have room for hurt feelings and egos in these scenarios, you know what I mean? It
yeah,
hurts.
yeah,
It hurts sometimes to have those blows,
well,
where
yeah,
you did something wrong and
yeah,
you get taken down and you get humbled. But it ultimately, if you approach it the right way, will make you a better firefighter, will make you a better leader, and the outcome for the people we serve will be better, which is always the most important thing.
very true. And in the don't ask why me, you can look at that and say, well, we know exactly why it's you, or me, I should say,
Right.
because I didn't do the corrective steps to prevent it in the beginning. Look at it as like a strategic point of view. If you
Yeah.
have a certain outcome, you can avoid that outcome by preparing. Preparation is key to a lot of things,
Yeah.
especially what we do out in the street, because operations side of the fire service is all reactive. And the only way to be good at reacting to things is preparation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why training is invaluable for us, because call comes in, we don't have time to research it, train on it, then go out and solve the problem.
Right.
We have to anticipate all these sort of situations that we get into out in the street.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like one more point on the failure thing is, I know we talked about it maybe in the first season we did the podcast, is being able to admit the failure when other people see it is one thing. Being able to admit the failure when nobody sees it is another thing. So,
Oh yes, certainly.
being legitimately self-reflective, self-analyzing, self-critical is important too. Not just when people see it, but hey, I know for me, like, if anybody knows me, they know I love forcible entry. It's a big one, but
Yes.
part of why I like it is because I was so bad at it. You know what I mean? At first, like, I was big guy, kicking doors in was the way to go. And there have been times, like, I can recall specifically, like, I went to force a door and I got frustrated. Instead of like doing the right things, I like got to let myself get a little frustrated, did something different. And, eventually the problem was solved. But could I have, without everybody knowing, could I have personally done better, been more efficient, got inside sooner,
Right.
that stuff? And then you take that lesson and think, okay, now the next time you're about to get frustrated, you say, all right, hang on, wait a minute, done this before, we
Yes.
could settle down, we can get through it, or whatever the case is.
Right. So you turn a weakness into a strength.
Yeah, you have to, right? In the fire service,
Yes.
you have to. And again, it's not really for us, it's for them, right? So if I take an extra 10
Yeah.
seconds to get inside, that's 10 seconds somebody might be in there without an air pack and turnout gear on,
Yeah, exactly. Because it could be a citizen or it could be one of us.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. What's next?
What's next? Let's see. We've done failure. So the top priority is teaching. Before becoming an officer, I made it a point. So when I got hired, or when I started the fire service, and within a short amount of time, I always wanted that leadership supervisory position. And the one thing I made sure was that I paid attention to the job and learned from it, and trained and read and prepared myself for that position. I didn't know until when I became promoted how much teaching I would actually be doing. because when something's wrong, the firefighter is supposed to bring it to the officer, and this officer is supposed to solve the problem and make the corrective action. Granted, I do not have all the answers to every single solution or anything like that, but what I'm saying is that part of the job is making sure that you understand it quite well so you can help out others and teach others. Sometimes I'll notice just starting one of the chainsaws, one of the small motors, and going through the process of that and the troubleshooting of it for somebody that's never touched a chainsaw or rotary saw in their life. You got to show them. And if you don't have a good foundation of it from when you were a firefighter and training on it, you really can't. It's going to be more difficult for you to demonstrate the proper techniques of it.
Yeah.
And I'm under this new, I don't know if it'd be a hypothesis or a theory. Hypothesis to me are like the good idea factory, which need to be shut down sometimes, especially on the street.
Yeah, understand. Yep.
And then there's theories which have been tried and proven. So my new thought is I might get some backlash from this one. Over the past decade or so, it's been a lot of emphasis on safety. So don't get me wrong, safety is extremely important. I understand that. I'm not sitting here saying go out and be unsafe. But the safety first culture almost takes away from what the mission is of the fire service. It puts more emphasis on our safety than the civilian safety. So
I couldn't agree with you more.
My new thing is culture of training, rather a culture of safety, because with proper training, correct training, safety is part of it and it's built in. So you could have a safety officer on the fire ground, right? And the safety officer, say you have a trench rescue incident and the safety officer knows nothing about trench rescue. And he says, hey, that's unsafe what you're doing. But the members that have been training on it, preparing for it, and educating themselves about it know that yes, it is risky, but it is safe to do in that instance. So his perspective is completely different than the people that have been training on it and educated about it versus a safety officer that is very familiar with the task at hand. And he can say, okay, that is risky, but you're doing it safe. And I think Jordan Peterson said it the best. How do you do dangerous things safely?
Teaching, Jordan Peterson says it about kids. Like, how do you teach them? You let them do dangerous things safely, right?
Yes. That's our job.
I agree. So inherently, we go into unsafe conditions, right? That's part of our job.
Yes.
There are always going to be things that happen, bad things that happen in those places. Safety, like you said, is an outcome of training, right? We're safe by training. We're safe by understanding the fire environment. We're safe by understanding how fire moves. We're safe by understanding the tactics that allow us to search ahead of a hose line or above the fire floor while simultaneously letting an engine company get to the fire.
Right.
We're safe through learning our job and knowing our job and acting on our job. We're not safe through inaction. And I think that's a lot of the safety first culture is inaction. Well, this is unsafe for us, so we shouldn't do it. No, it's unsafe for anyone, but it's our job. We need to do it. Somebody's counting on us to do it. The way that we do that is by training and understanding and being good at what we do, not by not doing things.
Very true. And I can never been in the position, don't want to be in the position, but I can pretty much guarantee it. If you're the victim stuck on a second or a third floor window hanging out, you really don't care about the firefighter safety. You care about your life, and we're there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, that's the entire reason the fire service exists, right?
Right. Very true.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with you more. And again, you said there's going to be people that disagree, and again, like this is where nothing divides firemen more than tactics, kind of thing. But
yes,
I completely agree with you, and I'm sure that you follow like Fire Rescue Survey and stuff like that.
Yes,
but those guys, I love what they do because they're backing what they do with data. So So instead of saying, oh, search ahead of the hose line's unsafe because you're ahead of the hose line and that you don't have the protection of the hose line. Okay, yeah, it's an unsafe place to be in theory.
Very true.
But if we look at the data, that's not where people are getting killed. You know what I mean? That's not how we're hurting people. We're hurting people in all these other ways. So if we know what we're doing and we do it correctly, then
Mm-hmm.
we have good outcomes. And I think that's hugely important, is to safety through inaction is not the way to be safe. It's not how the fire service should operate, in my opinion. I also, I think it's interesting you talked about little things like starting a saw or like troubleshooting a
Yes.
saw when it comes to teaching, because in order for those big plays to happen on the fire ground,
Mm-hmm.
you might have to teach the minutia of
Yeah.
how to do stuff. Like how do you literally start a saw? How do you swing an axe? I know that
Mm-hmm.
we see that more and more teaching at the academy. You get people that come in that, I think physical labor jobs were much more common,
Yes.
in years past, and they're less common among younger people now. They're going to school, they're doing different things.
Mm-hmm.
Totally fine. 100% fine. We just have to know when they come in how to effectively teach them to do some of this stuff so that when they get to the fire ground that they can do it. So it could be as simple as literally, how do you swing an axe? How do you swing an axe in tight quarters? How do you
Right.
start a chainsaw? How do you, like, all of that minutia? And I think, like you said, that the amount of teaching is almost infinite. You could teach
Yes.
down to the little stuff, and I think knowing the little stuff allows you to make the big picture and do the big stuff,
Yes.
you know?
Little things matter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all building blocks,
It really is. It's the details are important. I've heard a saying, "Don't sweat the small stuff," and yes, I partially agree with that. However, the little things are important.
Yeah, I agree with you. What's your next highlight? I like it.
All right. All right. So I got this written in the book itself. Solid training program, repositioning over the years with training allows you to do the job without thinking. So basically muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
This was that was the gist of something in this chapter here. We don't have it yet in our department. We're working towards it, but like assignments. So yes, we have assignments obviously like that, but I'm talking more about the little plaques that you put above a riding position. So like jump one grabs the irons, jump two grabs the can, and something else the officer grabs X, Y, and Z. I don't know what everybody's opinion on that is, but it gives you guidance so you know exactly what you have to do. And by doing it on routine calls, when the big call comes in, you're not even thinking what you need to grab. So you can concentrate on other things and think about other things that you need to that are more important on the fire ground than just saying, "Oh, which tool am I going to grab on this call?" You already know.
Yeah.
You're pre-planning it.
I think there's like, I don't know if this is the right word, but I think there's like a level of automation that's appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's kind of, for me, that's kind of where that comes in. I think there's like a balance. We don't want to build robots, right? So we want people
Right.
to be able to adapt to what is always a very dynamic environment.
Yes.
But we can allow them to better adapt if we take some of the decisions off the plate, right? So that you
Yes.
only have so much mental bandwidth. So if I know in this position I'm just taking the can with me, then
Right.
when I need it, I have it. And if I don't, I don't. If I don't need it, then it's there, whatever. I can put it to the side or whatever. I think automating some of the little stuff. I think maybe this is kind of applicable. Dave Quick, Manchester. He's an engine boss. Does a lot of teaching about engine work, and he talks about making like attack packages and the kind of the rules of three that we can process. We can process three, so we have it automated that we have these three layouts in our truck, and then we have the decision making ability to assess the fire and decide which one we need. But they're already laid out. We know that we only have to choose one of three. So
Right.
a little bit of automation allows us to be effective, but still gives us the ability to like adapt to changing environments. And I think that's hugely important.
Yeah. Agreed. 100%.
And I think even little stuff like, where do you hang your gear? Like, do you
Oh
put it
yeah.
down the same way? That
Yes.
you can don it the same way every time? And it's the thought process. Oh, where's my hood? Where are my gloves? Where's this? Where's that? It's always, that little bit of automation chips away at stuff that you have to think about while you're actually getting ready to go or going to or at a fire scene.
Right. And with the new hires, I teach them many things. One of the things I emphasize on is, so we run the ambulance too, and we're cross staffed. So when we're at a full shift, the first ambulance is dedicated to being an ambulance and the engine company is dedicated to being an engine company. But the second engine is the second ambulance and the tower crew is the third ambulance. And I always emphasize the fact that like check your gear, check your pack, check your tool, check your truck, then check your ambulance. Because I've come to work before and didn't go in that process. And before you know it, it's like 10, 11 in the morning and I haven't checked my life safety equipment yet. So
Yeah.
I emphasize going in that order. So, you know, your gear's set, and you know, your pack's good and your tools there and everything else on the truck is good. And when you work your way over to the ambulance, I preach it and I've gotten some pretty good followership through it is checking your pack by putting it on and running through everything with your pack on versus checking your pack in the seat.
Right.
Because when you check your pack in the seat, everything's backwards. Your purge valve's over here. You turn on the bottle over here versus the purge valve here where it's really is. And then the bottle over here where it is, and the gauge comes over and the low pressure line comes over here. But if you check it in your seat, you're doing it backwards. So when you get into a
Good point.
jam, you're most likely going to not do it correctly. And then you're going to have to think about it and then do it.
Yeah.
Versus just naturally doing it and not having to worry about your process of what you're doing. You can concentrate on other things like looking around and observing your environment. Is the heat increasing rapidly? Is there flames rolling over my head? What's going on in the room you're in or the hallway that you're going down or the stairs you're going up? And also topping off your bottle, like our Cascade system is 6,000 PSI and our bottles are 5.5s. I know if I ever get stuck in the fire, I'm going to want make sure that bottle was topped off. And before every time I switch positions or come to work, I top off the bottle regardless of where it looks on the gauge on the bottle itself. And, that extra 200 PSI is going to matter someday, maybe not for you, but maybe for the next firefighter that unfortunately doesn't do it.
Right.
And I know through training and being on air in the station working out that, after the vibrant alert stops, which is roughly around 150 PSI, I can get another between 12 and 19 breaths. And if I didn't, so that's 150 PSI. And if I didn't put 150 PSI in the tank, then in the bottle, then that would have been shorter lifespan. I find it interesting because divers like go through their whole gear before going into the water, where again, operations is reactive.
Right.
And we don't take the time, or some of us don't take the time to do it properly and set ourselves up for success.
Yeah. I think even like with the air in the bottle, like even not a life safety issue, I want to be inside and work. The more air, the more air I have in my pack, the longer I get to spin inside and do the job that I love doing too. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I want to give a little bit of credit to one of your newer. I don't know if he's still pro. We talked about him a little bit before. Pete Batzinger. So
yes,
I did a class with him, and I don't know if I'm going to say the term right, but he called it like mental offloading or something like that. So you're saying, when you check your pack on your back and everything's the same way, when it comes to needing to use it, you don't have to think about it. So now you've offloaded a little bit of mental ability, right? So now you have that little bit of, you have a little more reserve for when you need to make a decision under duress, right? So the more like small stuff you can mentally offload, then the better you are at reacting to the dynamic nature of the environment. So
very true.
Something maybe a little stupid, but I do all the time is anytime I go to turn on my pack, I just click my donned off switch. Just so I know that it's not going to piss air. And then when I turn it on, I hear it. I don't take that second to be like, oh, is it the purge? Is it whatever? I always click it, make sure it's in the place, and then I turn it on, and I never have to worry about it. Right. So it's just a little habit that I don't have to think about something if I turn it on and I start pissing air. Now I just don't have to think about it. It's just one less thing my brain has to process. I don't have a lot of power up there. You know what I mean? I gotta offload where I can.
Right. I hear you. And it's funny when you're going through the academy yourself, that's like one of the things that instructors look for. And I know working at the academy myself, that was definitely one of the things I would emphasize on. And whenever I hear the air rushing out of the regulator when it's not supposed to.
Yeah.
And we would definitely turn that into a teaching moment with the recruits.
Right. Right. I think that's a huge thing is that preparation. I think, like I said, I think having a little bit of automation in the right places allows you to be more dynamic when you need to be, right? Allows you
Yes.
to make better decisions, allows you to have to take less things into account to make those decisions. And I
Hmm.
think at the end of the day, it's going to affect outcomes. And again, it might not be that you save a life or even a building. It might
Right.
just be that you got to work longer or you got in the door first instead of the person behind you, which, we always want
Yes.
to do, right? So it's
Yeah.
not always life or death, but if you love the job and you enjoy the job, it's going to lead to being able to do more of the job too.
Very true. And getting in the door first is where the porch drill comes in handy in working with your gloves on, besides
Yep.
putting on your gloves afterwards.
Yep.
And being able to manipulate everything with the gloves on is invaluable also.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
How do you get good? No mystery to mastery. This is from Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice understands the connection between preparation and performance, between intelligently applying hard work and results, between mediocrity and mastery of the job. And Jerry has the skills to complete with all will to do. And I remember Jerry Rice as a kid. The guy was a beast, and I think, again, taking into preparation to everything and making sure you can perform well and knowing the difference between hard work and mediocrity. I know as an officer who's more squared away than somebody else. And if the situation arises where that person is prepared for that type of situation, they're my go-to person.
Yeah.
It's just uh, somebody else that hasn't put in the time and the effort.
I just had a conversation yesterday with one of our division chiefs about that is kind of, I think it's a hard job. Sometimes in a leadership position, you really have to know your people and their talents. And one of the things we talked about too is like everybody has a use, right? So
Yes.
maybe this person isn't the best at forcing the door, but man, they're going to move that line through the building like it's nothing,
Yes.
right? And so
Yep.
being able to put your players in the right spot is important. Everybody can't be good at everything, even if we want to
No.
be. Everybody can't
No.
be good at everything. I like the quote too. I wrote down is to intelligently apply skills and hard work,
Yes.
right? Because you
Yes.
can unintelligently apply them. And again, not to bring it back to forcible entry, if you haven't learned by now, one of my favorite things.
Yes.
But
Mine too.
if you just put in hard work by kicking a door until it breaks, that is not effectively teaching you how to force entry, right? You have to
No.
intelligently apply hard work. All right, so you have to intelligently apply your skills and your abilities into using your tool the right way and mechanical advantage and everything else to get through the door. I could just do hard work and try to brute force my way through it, but that's also not smart, right? So we
No.
need the intelligent application of the hard work. I think that's
Yes.
the key part of it.
Yes. And that leads me into two things. Karl von Clausewitz, from the Prussian general from the 1800s, his book on war. In it is, the commander needs to be quite fluent in everything. His knowledge, and his knowledge must become capability. So it's application of knowledge is the difficult part, besides preparing for it, obviously, but applying your knowledge so others pick up on the message and they track what you're saying and they implement what you're saying
Right.
is very tough, because I've done it recently. This past weekend, I was at a class and I didn't like the instructor out the gate. He just rubbed me the wrong way the first couple sentences that he said. And I told myself, all right, don't let the message get lost by how you think of this person. And before the end of the day, I was like, this guy's actually pretty good. And I actually learned a lot. So, you have to weed out how somebody's presenting something and just look at the message itself,
Yeah, definitely.
not how it's being said.
I think that's a rare skill,
Right.
to be able to do that because we're all human, right? And we interact with
Yep.
personalities in certain ways, and when we get turned off to people, like you said, the message doesn't get through. I again, like relating it back to experiences that I've had, recently had time in the academy class. One of the instructors rubbed a group of students the wrong way. And, they were kind of vocal about it, whatever. And that's exactly,
Right.
I said almost verbatim what you said. I said, don't let the presentation take away the message. This person is wildly intelligent and has
Right.
a lot of experience and really knows what they're talking about. And I said too, like, everybody's entitled to a bad day, right? I have my bad
Yep.
day, probably more often than most, but I have
Yes.
my bad days. You have yours. Everybody has them. You
Yep.
might have just caught the guy on a day that they just didn't deliver right because they have something else going on. So
Right.
you have to give people a little bit of leeway if you really want to take the message away. I think another way to think about it too is if you come in from a shift or for a shift and the truck's a mess, the bottles
Yes.
aren't full, the packs or whatever, and it's the first time it happened, you probably just put that stuff back together and don't even say anything about it, right? It just
Right.
is what I know those guys, they're good. It's the pattern that becomes important. So
Yes.
don't let the one-off ruin the thing, right? If you met this
Right.
guy at 10 different conferences and he was the same way every time, well, all right, maybe I still take the message away, but maybe this guy and I just don't see eye to eye about stuff or whatever. But
Yeah.
if it's
Exactly.
just that one day, if it's just that one day, that one bad day, or just the personalities don't mesh, don't lose the lesson because of it.
Right.
I think
And
that's hard.
the other, yeah, it's extremely hard. And, that's where sitting down and making sure that you're listening to absorb the information versus listening to respond.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also we touched on a little bit like all the things that we need to learn in the fire service to be able to effectively meet the mission and do our job, because the fire service has kind of turned, it has turned into an all hazards department that we respond to. Because
Yeah, definitely.
when the police can't solve the problem, who do they call? They call the fire department. When citizens have a problem, who do they call? They call the fire department, and we mitigate the situation and give them guidance and point them in the right direction of who to contact on the minor calls. And then big calls, we're out there solving them and acting. There's one quote that you often hear in the fire service, and that is "Jack of all trades, master of none."
It's not the whole quote.
No, it's not. The complete quote is "Jack of all trades, master of none, oftentimes better than a master of one."
Yep.
That was written by Robert Greene in 92, and he was writing that about William Shakespeare.
I didn't know that
Now,
part. I didn't know you wrote that about William
yeah,
Shakespeare.
yeah. So, that if you look at it like, yeah, we're a jack of all trades, master of none, is that a victim mentality?
Yeah, could be.
Could be. And I think that, yeah, it is very difficult to master more than one thing, which I don't know how you do it besides a lot of repetition. But we have to, in the fire service, be knowledgeable about a lot of things. And at least, if not awareness level, most likely operations level. Awareness level, you know who to point to and who to call, such as like the state hazmat team, for example, and your
Right.
hazmat personnel, because average fire companies aren't solving or stabilizing a lot of those incidents. They're, stepping back at awareness level and taking care of contacting who they need to so they can take care of it. But it's just interesting that a lot of people say that and the full quote doesn't get done.
I think that's where, like, is it a victim mentality? I think is how do you approach that jack of all trades, master of none? Is that I'm jack of all trades, master of none because I need to know a lot of things, and then maybe I
Yeah,
find the thing that I like the most and I learn the most about that, but I'm still applicable? Or do you see it as like, well, we have to know so much stuff, I'm never even gonna like try to really be a master of anything. So I think how you approach that, like jack of all trades,
certainly.
master of none, is important.
Yes. And, is it woe is me, I can't learn everything, or I'm not going to learn everything, then certainly that's the mentality right there.
Right.
But if you challenge it and say, I'm gonna do the best I can and learn as much as I can about as many different aspects of the job you can. I mean, it's more, you're more well rounded. And as a leader, if you don't know it, you have to, you know, see who does know it and utilize their knowledge and ability
Yeah.
to it. And so, we call for additional resources, or look at one of your crew members and knowing them that they know more about something than you do, which
Yeah.
is 100% okay. And that's a good thing. And utilizing their skill and their ability to solve the problem.
Yeah. I think I think two things. One is something I've quoted before, although I can never remember who said it or where I saw it. But I remember watching a presentation, and the person speaking said that the fire service is the best form of government. You call us, we show up, we handle your problem, we leave you alone.
Yeah.
Government doesn't get any better than that, right? That's what we do. You call us, we show up, we handle your problem, we're out of your hair. Generally, for the most
Yeah.
part, right?
Very true.
But then I think it goes back to what you were saying before too, where we're all jack of trades. So anybody on your shift can plug and play, hopefully, in any position to some extent. But we're also still going to know where we have those like key players for doing certain things. So you can be the jack of all trades and then throw yourself into learning, a specific skill so that that's your skill set. Like, hey, I can do a little bit of everything, but if you need somebody to do X, Y, or Z, I'm your guy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that's how you have to take it. Is I'm going to learn as much about everything as I can, and the stuff that I become passionate about, then that's the stuff I'm going to take and try to run with too.
Agreed. And it's funny, the more reading I do, whether it's for being a paramedic or the fire service and leadership or anything in that matters, the more I learn, the more I realize the less I actually know.
Yep.
There's so much out there to learn about everything that, you think you got a firm grasp of something, and then you turn around and see another book or attend another conference or talk to somebody else, and they shed a whole new perspective on whatever the subject is. And
Yep.
it enlightens you, and you're like, oh, I never knew that.
Yeah. The things you don't know that you don't know are often like the most dangerous, especially if you think you know them. That's where it becomes, when you think you know and you don't know, it becomes kind of, but I think that's where it is, like the things you don't know that you don't know. And the only way to learn about them is through exposure, right? So whether it's reading, whether it's training, whether it's whatever the case is for the fire ground, the only way to learn about them is to continue being active in the fire service, right? If you're not active in trying to, read articles or watch a podcast or do training or just do something, you know what I mean? Then you're never going to expose those weaknesses, because that's what they are effectively, right? They're weaknesses.
Very true. And with the technology out there today, there's really no excuse, because you can, everybody has either an Android or an iPhone, and you just basically Google it, and so much information comes up. There's podcasts about it. There's YouTube videos, educational videos about it. There's books, there's magazines, there's articles. There's so much information out there, and also reaching out to the people that are, the subject matter experts is invaluable. Recently, I'm part of the tech team at work, and we had to do some training with the DPW in the waste pollution control division, and it was all on confined space. I had some knowledge about confined space, but going through the process of building the PowerPoint and it was invaluable. All the information that I learned from it, and part of it, I took a little bit of time spent on OSHA, not very much, because that'll put the audience to sleep if you spend too much time on the rules and regulations.
Yeah.
However, what I did do is I did a lot of scenarios where after action reports, and I actually reached out to a friend of mine who does confined space on the side as the standby.
Awesome.
For these companies, and he put me in touch with a couple people. I basically interviewed them and took the information I gained from their actual incidents that they've been to for confined space, and applied that to the lecture, and it was pretty educational on my end, and I think the DPW workers, they appreciated the time and effort. We got great feedback from it, and it was actually a really, really great day and a lot of learning. So part of my tactic is, when I go to develop a lecture or PowerPoint or whatever the case may be, is researching it and cross-referencing all the research is to nausea, and I do my best to stay on track and present what I need to present, but also knowing above and beyond in case there's questions, or just by knowing above and beyond, it helps you understand the why a little bit more, so you can present it more. So if
the why is the important part. Like, why? I can tell you to do something, but if you understand why you do it, you're more likely
Right.
to do it, and
Mhm.
then you're more likely to have a good outcome from it, to understand why you're
Right.
doing it instead of just doing it.
Yes, it's not all about telling people to do it or how to do it. It's more about expressing the why and letting them surprise you at the end of how they did it.
I was going to say that too. Yeah, exactly. If you tell them why you have to do something, oftentimes they can deduce how to get it done, right?
Yes.
So, hey, why do we have to do this task for X, Y, and Z? Okay, well, if that's the goal, then maybe the way to go about it is here. And that way
Yeah.
might not be the way that you thought. You might thought, oh, we
Right.
go this way. And I think that's where being an effective leader with humility is important too, because you let your crew explore their path, like you just said, to getting things done sometimes. And that's you. It
Right.
gives them confidence that they can do it. It gives them confidence that you respect and understand them and listen to them or
Mhm.
whatever the case is. And I mean, we all know there's the times where it's like, hey, I'm the boss right now. This is what we're doing and this
Yep.
is how we're doing it. And then
Yep.
afterwards we can talk about it, and maybe next time we can try your way in training, or we can try this way and see how that works or whatever. But there's limits to it sometimes too. But one of the other things, going back just a few minutes, is talking about all the avenues to get information. The
Yes.
access to information should not be a barrier in
No.
2025, right?
No, definitely not.
Even if you have some crazy situation and all your money from your paycheck goes to wherever and you don't have internet at home, you got it at the firehouse, right?
Very
There
true.
are books at the firehouse, there are magazines at the firehouse, there are grants and scholarships to take conferences and there's free training in Massachusetts, free training through the Fire
Yep.
Academy. So the access to information should never be a barrier
Right.
to learning. So if you feel like there's a hindrance to accessing information, you probably just need to try a different avenue.
Yeah, 100%. And there's the resources out there are countless.
Yeah.
There's so much information that you can gain. And James Mattis said it the best. You need to read, to learn from other people's experiences so you don't make those same mistakes.
Yeah.
You usually experience shows you, at least in my experience, that like how not to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes you get lucky. You're like, oh, that worked quite well. I can improve on that. Or other times you're just like, yeah, that just did not work. And I don't
Right.
know why. And then you go back and you train on it and you educate yourself about it. And the next time you're in that situation, you crush it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we're coming up on the hour mark, which is kind of the attention span of the audience that we generally have. So
That's very true.
you want to hit one more highlight or quote from the book? One more highlight or quote from the book and talk about it, and then we'll tell. I think what I'll do is I'll end up linking the book in the episode description.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually gonna switch gears and just recommend the book
Okay.
to people. You can get it on audio. You can download it and listen to it and absorb the information that way. I recently learned that information, reading and listening to a book they're almost equivalent. So however you do it, it counts. The one thing I will add is another book.
Marine Maxims.
Yes. And there's one little part in here that I'd like to just share. It's real brief. Basic daily routines, BRD. Number one, find a Marine doing a good job and thank them. Number two, find a problem and fix it. Number three, teach something. And number four, learn something.
I love that.
Yeah, it's priceless. And I've implemented that into my leadership routine.
I think
Certainly.
I think that does a good job of acknowledging your crews, right? You find
Yes.
somebody that did a good job and you let them know, so they feel like you notice and understand that they care and that they're doing a good job.
Right.
I think all that's important. We publicly praise, privately condemn.
Yep, very true. If you don't give any feedback to somebody, how do they know they're doing something right or wrong?
Right. Feedback. Yeah, that feedback is important. That's the whole the feedback loop, right? Is that what they call it? The feedback
Yep.
loop. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's several positions on leadership. There's the autocratic style where you lead from front and you get the job done. Then I kind of thought of this one myself, and it's lead from the side, where you're giving guidance to somebody and helping them along to develop their leadership skills. And then the
I
last
like
one
that.
leading from behind, where you've demonstrated through Thoracratic style leadership on the fire ground. You've given them guidance through training. You've helped them out on scene in similar events. And leading from the back is letting your people run with it and do their job and surprise you in the best way they can with the outcome.
I like that lead from the side. I've never heard that before. I wrote that one down. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I thought of that one about a year ago and wrote that down and came up with that 3-step process.
I love that. So I think wrapping it up, I wrote down a couple of quotes here from the book.
Okay.
And I think one that kind of sums what we say. Obviously, you have 100 sticky notes on that book, right? There's a lot more to it. So in an effort to get you to go out and read the book, we won't talk about it all, right? That's what we'll blame. We'll blame it on that, not the attention span of people.
Yes.
And my own attention span included in there. One of the things I want to say, hang on real quick, my computer just told me it's about to die. The plug had come out somehow. So I'll leave with this quote, and it's just the responsibility as a leader. So as a leader, you're responsible for the success of your team, and the team's success is driven by how well you prepare, motivate, and guide your people.
Yes.
And I think that's what all of it comes down to, right? In that position, all the stuff that we talked about can kind of wrap up in that, is motivating them to do the thing, preparing them to do the thing, and guiding them, whether it's from the front, from the side, or from the back. I think that's kind of the gist of it all.
Agree 100%. And I see leadership more of a responsibility than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, I really appreciate you reaching out to me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
One, John actually sent me this book, put it in the mail, old fashioned, got it to me, and then wanted to talk about it and to come back on the podcast, releasing some episodes after about a year hiatus with some other stuff going on. And so I'm excited to get back, to have some new people on, but to have some of the people that we've had on before, especially local to New England, and doing a good job for the fire service. So I appreciate everything, John.
Well, I certainly appreciate this opportunity and thank you very much.
So we'll end it here, but if you are looking for a decent book on leadership, whether or not you're a football fan, The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh has a lot of lessons in it that are applicable to the firehouse, fire ground, and fire service in general. So thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we'll be coming back at you next week with another episode. All right, take care.